world. Welcome to another episode of 4am in Quarantine. I am here with my man, David Pere. Super excited to have this man on. He's better known as the military to millionaire. David Pere joined the Marine Corps in August 2008. Since that time, he's lived and traveled in many unique places around the world, including a combat tour in Afghanistan, which we're going to get into. That's going to be really cool. Extremely excited for you to talk about that. His awards include the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, 2 Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals, and a Combat Action Ribbon. Want you to definitely shed some light on that as well, man. So happy and grateful to have you on the podcast. And, I think this is going to be one for the books. Excited for you to just kind of talk about your transition and you being able to balance both the military as well as real estate. I know you're a huge real estate investor, and we can kind of dive deeper into that. I'm excited for you to, to just share your story with everyone. And thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, brother. I don't know which part of that do you want me to talk about first?
Let's dive into why and how you got into the military and why the Marine Corps. What kind of drove you to the Marine Corps? I know you have a lot of options in the military, and give us your take on that.
All right, let me put my recruiter man hat on from back when I was a recruiter. I joined primarily, so I grew up, I was born in Northern California, but I grew up in Arkansas, in a small town outside the capital. And when I was looking at life after high school, I was homeschooled most of the time I was in high school. I went to public school for like a year. I hated it. I didn't like having to wait on people who were slower than me in a subject before I could progress, and vice versa, having to feel like I was holding everyone back. I just homeschool was so much easier because it was like, oh, I'm good at this, I'm done. Oh, I suck at this, I get to spend a lot of time on it. It just fit me better, which thinking forward now to entrepreneurship, I think it works out well that way because you're control your schedule. But I couldn't figure out what I wanted to study in college. I didn't have any money for school, and I wanted to leave the state. So it was like, well, I don't know what I want to study. I don't have money to freaking pay for school, much less out of state tuition. And I don't want to stay in Arkansas. So that's out the window. And I was thinking like, okay, I could be a police officer. I could be a firefighter. And, the one semester I was at public school, recruiters come in and they talk to people, and I don't necessarily know. I mean, I talked to all the service branches, but there was just something about the Marine Corps between the uniforms and the way they carried themselves that uh, it just hit me harder. And they challenged me and called me on my BS and made things a little bit more difficult for me as far as instead of the Army would be like, oh yeah, you could probably stand to lose a few pounds. The Marine Corps is like, you got to lose 20 pounds. And we're not talking to you. Like, oh, all right, well, I guess that I'll chase that. So I went with the Marine Corps, I think, because it was more of a challenge, and I was definitely not disappointed. I love it. I mean, I'm in the logistics field, which means, I'm like a truck driver, which nowadays people join and they're like, oh, wow, that's such a boring job. How did he ever get to do anything cool? Well, in 2008, when I joined, there were still, mid-Afghanistan, mid-Iraq. There was still a lot of stuff going on. And so I say fortunate enough because defining moments of my life to get to deploy, but it was just a really fun few years when I first started getting to travel around and shoot guns and blow stuff up and, live the adventuresome life that you see in movies sometimes. In fact, there's actually an HBO documentary on the little town I was in Afghanistan at that time. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, sounds pretty wild. Just being able to, be in Afghanistan and just think of, going to sleep every night and waking up to do your job, knowing that, that you're under such pressure and, you're fighting for your country and, keeping those that you love and, safe at home. It's just an unbelievable, I think, achievement and just just a complete selfless act. And, I commend you for that. And, thank you for your service. I know that you're continuing your career at the moment. And I know that I appreciate it, and there's millions and millions of people out there that appreciate it as well, man. So thank you again for doing that for not just yourself, but everybody else that you're keeping safe back at home.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. It's been fun. Yeah, it's been a good time. I mean, and I'll be honest. I think anyone who tells you that they go to sleep thinking they're like about who they're protecting back home when they're deployed is probably just trying to sound good on television. 'Cause
Yeah.
you're not thinking about much. It's like, okay, I'm exhausted. I'm going to sleep. All right, now I got to wake up. Okay, don't die today. All right, is there a gym? Do I get to eat? When do I get to eat today? What are we eating? Oh, another MRE. Did anyone bring any freaking Pop Tarts this week? Like, what are we working on? Does anyone know if the cigarette truck's going to come by this month? Like, yeah, it's it's funny because I joke like the reason deployment was so awesome, other than being with a bunch of guys with like a huge purpose in life, because you definitely feel that sense of purpose, is because life was so simple. There's no freaking bills, there's no distractions, there's no relationship drama, there's no, it's like wake up, eat, maybe gym, sleep, don't die. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's a good time.
Yeah. And I think that, that has, that's the ultimate, kind of vision of living in the present, right? Because you have no other distractions. It's like, hey, fight or flight mode, right? This is where I am. There's no other distractions, whether it's technology, drama, other people, politics, whatever it might be. I mean, you're focused. You're in complete tunnel vision when you're in that environment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, it's fun. It's fun in it's fun in a way that only other veterans would understand when I'm telling you, like, if offered to go back to Afghanistan today, I would be putting my gear together. It's
Wow.
everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you do that." And like vets, I don't know, maybe it's just Marine Corps thing, but we're a little crazy. But like, put me in, coach. I'm getting the itch right now. I'm like, what do you mean I haven't gone out of the country in this many years? What's going on? Like, I'm behind a desk. This is some BS. I didn't reenlist for desk work. I
I didn't sign
reenlisted
up
to,
for this, right?
find some bombs and stuff. Like, come on. So,
Uh, oh man, that's good stuff. Well, I wanna definitely get into the real estate side of things. How did you get started in real estate? Why real estate? And how, I guess we can kind of get into how do you balance the two? And yeah, I guess let's just start as to how you got started in real estate and why real estate.
well, long story, kind of short, I guess. I had lost a bunch of money in stocks, like gambling when I was younger. I didn't know what I was doing. So, I wasn't a huge fan because, oh, I made money. Oh, I lost money. And
Yeah.
I did not do very well with that. I didn't know what I was doing at all. But so I kind of had this tainted, like, that's not for me. Um, and in 2000, wow, I don't know what that was coming out. In
Frog.
2015, yeah, in 2015, someone handed me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, yeah, I don't read. And he was like, okay, great. He pulled it out on a CD and was like, well, listen to it. You drive a lot as a recruiter, so put this in your car. I'm like, okay, fine. He called my bluff, so I'm like, all right, I'll listen to it. And man, like within 3 months, I'd bought a house. So I listened to that book. I started doing homework. I liked what it was talking about with cash flow and passive income and tenants. And I was like, wow, all this stuff makes sense. And I listened to that book. I listened to a few more of the Purple Library, Robert Kiyosaki books. And then I listened to some Bigger Pockets books, a book on rental property investing, which I think is still a #1 seller from Brandon Turner and some of that. And it just so happened like the stars aligned. My apartment lease was coming due like the end of December, and someone totaled my Harley by parking on top of it when they were drunk at a bar. And so I had cash. And then I was like, man, if all these books add up, like I'm paying $550 a month for an apartment, I could probably get a place for like $600 or $700 a month where I'm owning both sides of the duplex, and I could cover that difference even if it was vacant. But if it's not vacant, then I'm saving money having a bigger space and it's mine. Like, that sounds like a win. And so I looked around for a little while. I found a duplex that made sense. I pulled the trigger. And I wish I could see like the date that I had closed finished Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Like I wish I had a way to know what date I finished listening to that CD, because I mean, it's just funny. Like I would have, I don't think it's more than 3 months from flash to bang on that. And so, I mean, that was kind of the like jump into, but I mean, the reasons for why I like real estate so much in the cash flow game is the four big ones, right? Or it cash flow, so it pays me every month. Depreciation, so I'm getting tax benefits off it. Appreciation, if it goes up in value, I get to, I get that valuation increase, even if it goes up in value based on the money the bank lent me. And then debt pay down. My tenants are paying my mortgage. So like I have a 10 unit right now that almost $10,000 a year gets put into my mortgage from tenants. So on top of all the money it makes and everything else and all the tax benefits, they're paying off 10 grand a month on my mortgage that I'm not paying off. Or 10 grand a year, not monthly. Man, that'd be nice. But so it's been good. I guess that's kind of the why real estate. As far as balancing it, I think there's a quote that I enjoy because I'm kind of an asshole. I don't know. I didn't ask. Am I allowed to swear on here?
You're right.
All right, cool. Trying to be all professional. So I'm kind of a jerk sometimes. And so I love this quote that says, let me try to make sure I get the wording right here, but uh, essentially if you want to do something and you make a million excuses, then you didn't really want to do it. But if it's a priority, then you'll figure it out. Like
Yep.
there's a much better way to word that, and can't think of it right now because I'm
Layman's terms, that's all we need.
yeah. So, but essentially, like, look, if you're not going to prioritize something, it's never going to get done, and it really wasn't important to you. So stop pretending it was important to you. So that's what it is. If it's a priority, you'll find a way, right? So,
Yeah.
normally I am up at 3:55 every morning. As I told you this morning when I slept in, I'm doing weird, like our shifts got totally flip flopped. So I'm doing like 7 days on, 7 days off. And I just kind of decided on the 7 days off that I'm going to just be natural, wake up naturally and, whatever, if I don't have anything going on, and see how that feels for a change. I'm not sure I like it, but normally I'm up at 3:55 every morning because that gives me 2.5 hours before I have to leave the house for work, where I can journal my goals, visualize my what I want to achieve. I can sit at my computer and look for properties. I can write offers. I can send emails. I can do all that stuff before my day starts. Then I go to work, and when I come home, I still have 4, 5, 6 hours that I can pump stuff out before I go back to bed. So I would just ask, anyone who says that they don't have time, I would just say, yeah, look at your priorities. I mean, that might be the problem because I mean, right now I'm working 8 to 12 hours, depending on the day, in a vault, essentially, with no cell phone allowed in the building. So, aside from like lunch or when I walk out of the building, I'm not working on anything and I'm still able to produce content and, all kinds of stuff. So if I would say that if I'm able to do that, then you are too. It's just where are you actually spending your time when you're home?
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's huge, especially during this time of quarantine, right? Because the fact of the matter is everyone's home, right?
Oh
And
yeah, this
everyone's
is
home
great.
more than they were home 2 months ago. So just finding, where your time spent. And again, like you said, is just taking your priorities, laying them out on the table, and just placing them in order. Because at the end of the day, those are the things that you're going to get done first, is what's on the top of the priority list, and you go down from there. um, how many hours of sleep do you get? I'm you know I'm a firm believer that sleep is super important, right? But I also think that some people need more sleep than others, right?
So that's kind of what I've been experimenting with this week. So I when I'm up at 4 in the morning, I'm in bed by 8, try to be out by 9:30. So about 6.5. Usually it's probably ends up being around 6. I've been trying to play with uh, the whole circadian rhythm and the sleep type and try to see. I think I'm more like naturally. I'm more of a like go to bed at almost midnight, wake up at like 6 or 6:30 type.
Yep.
And so I've been trying to kind of play that while I have the open schedule to see what's most efficient for me so that when I am self-employed, I kind of have an idea what my days will look like. And I think that's it because I didn't set an alarm yesterday and I was up at 5:55 and I had gone to bed at like 11. So I think the 6.5 hours thing is pretty consistent for me as far as like the perfect number. If I get 8, I feel great, but I also don't want to get out of bed. And if I get 4, I can function totally fine. That's when I start drinking coffee in the morning. And right now I'm doing good with just water. So, you know,
There you go.
I don't know. I mean, I've functioned for sure. I've done the 3 hour, 4 hour nights things for, many, many, many days of weeks of whatever. But I think 6.5 is the magic one for me.
There you go. All right. Yeah, I'd say I'm somewhere around that 7 mark as well. Um, but again, there's some days that I'll randomly have 5.5 hours, and I'll be money for the entire day. Like not even like it'll hit 11 o'clock at night, and I'll still be wired, still be good to go. And I think it also has to do with nutrition, right?
Yeah.
You want to be feeding your body, your mind, and everything alike. Um, that good nutrients, stuff that's going to keep you going and keep your mind going as well. And I also think it's the way that you structure your day because, for me, I like to do my most important things in the morning, but I also like to do the things that are going to require the most, brain power and energy.
Yeah.
Because, if I wake up in the morning and all of a sudden I just start answering emails right away, um, it'll ruin the rest of my day for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that, but I make sure that at least trying my best to get that most important. I call my MVPs, right? So I get my most important MVP done as soon as I hop into my office. I have my hour and a half of just, I call it a jam session. I'm in there for an hour and a half jamming out, and I have nothing distracting me, putting my phone aside. My computer's on do not disturb. So whatever I'm doing, I'm focused. And that hyper focus is truly what gets me, past that, that threshold. That's what pushes me, into that next um, I can't even really describe it. You have to kind of be in it to understand what
Yeah.
it's like when you're hyper focused. Nothing else matters whatsoever.
I know it's hard to get into that flow
It
sometimes, but
is.
once you're there, that's why my cell phone doesn't come in the office. I do a terrible job of having entirely too many windows open on the desktop, but I try to like, okay, this is the only thing open. This is like blinders on.
Yep.
Um, I do need to do more of that first thing in the morning. I find a lot of my great thoughts come first thing in the morning, but with my schedule, I often don't get as much time to work first thing in the morning and on flow stuff. So I handle a lot of my busy crap and end up doing the that stuff, like the heavy stuff at night. But I'm trying during this time basically to do that. Like outside of, today when as we joked beforehand, that I basically ruined my whole schedule by accidentally allowing people to schedule calls like every hour of the day so that I don't have a block of calls and then a block of everything else, which I'm kicking myself for. Lesson learned. Safeguard my schedule better. So Wednesday, I'm gonna wake up and the first thing I'm gonna do is my like write my blog post, write for my book, work on the stuff that involves thought and focus, and then I'll go from there. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, it's important, man, and you nailed it on the head with just laying out the priorities and kind of journaling and putting everything on the table. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have your goals and your vision drawn out, it's almost just a dream, right? It's not something that's going to ever necessarily come to fruition, um, without it being written down and without it actually being, on your mind every single day, every single morning you wake up.
yeah, I'm easily twice as productive, if not 3 times, when I wake up and spend 15 minutes doing a journal first thing in the morning, because as I use the Bigger Pockets has the intention journal or whatever. And so it's the one part is like journaling, like what my goal is, what the weekly objective is, and what my most important next step is to accomplish that. But then on the other side is like an hour or an every half hour calendar for the day. And I just go in and pen exactly what I'm going to do during that day. And I'm so much more productive, being able to actually focus on what I need to do during the day. Because when I get off track, I just look at the calendar and I'm like, nope, this is where I need to be right now. And
Yep.
then it just does wonders for me. And case in point, yesterday was a super, super, super productive day. And I still missed one or two things on the calendar, and I was kicking myself until I realized, like, yeah, but you did I mean, I effectively did like 9 hours worth of work yesterday, so it's like, okay, I'll let it slide.
Yeah, you can't be too hard on yourself, especially when you have those days of like hyper focus, super productivity, and you can't get too hard on yourself. All
Yeah.
right. There's some people out there waking up, watching Netflix, taking a nap midday, doing a little work on the computer in bed, and going back to sleep. So
Yeah.
you got to give yourself some sort of a tap on the back, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something a lot of entrepreneurs miss is like giving themselves permission to relax and permission to say, good job. People get so wrapped up in the grind. I know I burned out a few times back in, the end of last year. And I realized very quickly, like, I had scheduled some white space on my weekends to do nothing, and that was doing nothing for me. What I needed to do instead was schedule like an hour and a half where it's like you're going to go get a massage, or you're going to go read a book, or you're going to go to the movies, and just give yourself permission to, like, hey, for this like 3 hours, I'm going to go do this, and I'm not going to. This is my job for that time. I'm not. It's not that I'm wasting time at the movie theater. It's that I'm going to watch this movie and stop focusing on everything else because I need that.
You need
And
those mindless activities for sure.
yeah.
It helps you balance. It helps, and those mindless activities. After those mindless activities, or some of, post those mindless activities anyway, are some of my biggest creative states, and it truly does help you to become more productive, more creative, and get your mind back on track, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Cool, man. So, just I know you kind of went through your first deal, but let's talk about a couple of your first deals, right? I don't know if you want to dive a little bit more into that first deal. I know you spoke about you kind of house hacked, um, not too long after reading or listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. That's one of my all-time favorites as well, and it's a great read. Anyone could read it, right? It's nothing that that you don't have to have any prior knowledge to real estate or passive income to read that book. That kind of is just the eye opener, right? And for me, that was one of probably the most eye opening books as well. Just
Yeah.
getting into real estate and understanding what passive income was, as opposed to just being, on the active side of real estate. So I just wanted you to go into, what has passive income done for you over, and how did you kind of go through those first couple of deals of yours?
Yeah. Well, passive income theoretically has allowed me to have a safety net where if I, stop working or whatever, I've got maybe not my full income yet, but a decent chunk of change coming in to offset my expenses. The problem with that being that I've then turned around and dumped most of that passive income into building an online brand and business. So I don't know that I'm actually benefiting yet from it. It's been like reinvested, reinvested, reinvested. So I haven't reaped the benefit of it yet, but it's growing much faster because of that. So it will. It's already awesome, right? But it will be even more awesome once I've built up the second platform, and now I've got two streams of income bringing in cash. In fact, they're already kind of at that point now, kind of crossing that threshold to where I'm not pumping cash in anymore. I'm getting, so it's nice. But all that to say, passive income just allows you freedom. It just allows you the opportunity to have time be what you're worried about, which is way more important, but people lose track of that. And so being able to control my schedule is like my number one concern going forward is how do I get to where I work on what I want, when I want, where I want, not what I have to do. And, if I enjoy shooting videos, then that's what I want to do all day. If I just want to run around and look at houses with other investors and film videos with them, like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. If I want to, I don't know, if I want to go play football, okay, cool. Like, I want to be able to do whatever I want to do, but obviously a lot of work related activities will still be done, but passive income allows you that freedom. As far as deals, and the first one was pretty cool. It was simple. It was I did an FHA loan, which I kicked myself for because I had the VA loan, but which is zero down, but my lender talked me out of it. He didn't really understand what was going on, I guess, and I didn't know enough to know any different. Told me that I couldn't use it more than once, and I shouldn't waste it. Well, you can definitely use the VA loan more than once, and I should have used it. But I mean, that's probably cost me 10 grand over the years in different expenses and down payments. But I used the FHA, so I paid 3.5% down. Still pretty solid, right? Like I mean, grand scheme of things, that's still a great loan. And I bought this thing. My mortgage payment was originally 615. Taxes have gone down a little bit, ironically, so now it's like 585.
Okay.
But it was 615 as my payment, and each side rented for 425. So I was like, okay, well, worst case scenario, I'm going to be paying like $190 out of pocket to live in this place. Not worst case scenario, but if it's rented, I'll pay $190 out of pocket plus maintenance and repairs. If it's not rented, I'm only paying $65 more than what I was to live in the apartment. So it made sense. And then rent is increased. So now rent is, 525 a side, and it's still, my mortgage is now 585 plus interest and insurance. And so I'm essentially making 10,000 or 10,000, 1,050 every month on a place that after all expenses cost me less than $900. So, well, actually, I say $900. I budget very conservatively. It cost me less than 750 probably realistically, but um, and so I've got this place that makes $200-300 a month that I put, 3 grand into. So every year for the last 4 years, it's paid me back for everything I put into it, and it's gone up $20,000 in value, and it gives me $200 or $300 a month. And so you can just kind of, as you keep doing that, yeah, you have to dump some cash in, but if you dump $10,000 in and it took you a year to save that, but then you earn $300 a month from doing it, okay, well then the next one might only take you 8 months to save for, or 10 months to save for. Then the next one might take you 8 months, and then eventually you get to a point where you can just kind of keep rolling. So I bought the duplex, and then I got married, and my wife had a house that wasn't really an investment, but we basically we refinanced, put a home equity line of credit on it, um, bought some land around it, threw some cattle on it, and basically got it to where with a tenant plus the cattle, it brings in some cash on top of everything we were paying. Took that HELOC and used it to buy a 10-unit apartment and a 40-unit apartment, and then we've since gotten rid of the 40-unit. But the 10-unit's been my best deal to date. So I got that thing. I paid 4.9% down and had 85% bank financing and 10% seller financing, meaning I'm just making payments to the seller
Mm.
instead of, I basically said, hey, give me 10 grand or 20 grand, whatever that number was. And I'll pay you 4% interest for the next 5 years, and I'll pay you back. And he's like, okay, cool. And
I just want to stop you there because I want to dive a little bit deeper into seller finance because, a lot of people listening either have used it and know about it or don't know what seller financing is at all. And I just want you to discuss how that really helped your deal and how that helped you kind of get into the deal because a lot of seller financing, right, is let's say you're getting 90% bank financing, 10% you're putting up yourself, right? You're putting up 10% equity. Um, there, maybe the deal doesn't work right in those terms. Then you bring the seller into financing another 10-15% of that deal, and all of a sudden the deal works. I just wanted you to kind of discuss and let the audience know how seller financing works and how it helped you kind of get into the deal at a better cap rate than you would have gotten in otherwise.
yeah, well, seller financing is essentially just, I always use a car analogy. So say you owned a $10,000 Ford Focus, and I said, cool, I want to buy your car. Um, I could either give you $10,000 or, say I had no money, right? So I could either give you $10,000 by going to the bank, getting a check from the bank and owing the bank whatever percentage for the next 5 years, 6 years. Or I could say, hey, how about I just pay you $500 a month for the next, I don't know, whatever that boils down to, 20 months. And then awesome, like cool. And that would be zero interest, paid off faster, and I'm basically just paying the seller for it down the road. So seller financing, the cool thing with it for real estate is that it's completely negotiable. Whatever terms you and the seller agree to is whatever terms work. Now, if you're getting a bank involved, you do have to make sure they're on board with the seller carrying a second, financing on the loan. But that's usually not a problem as long as you have a good relationship with your bank. I think seller financing is a huge opportunity right now because I mean it's always awesome, but as landlords start getting kind of hurt here or put in a hurt locker, I think that as they start to be kind of scared about tenants not paying rent and stuff like that, that seller financing might become an opportunity where it's like, hey, I'll take over your payments or I'll pay you rather than the bank, especially because as we were talking about before or earlier in this call that financing is getting kind of hard to come by right now. Like it'll come back around, but for the moment they've been pretty strict about what they lend, who they lend to. And so seller financing gets around that because it doesn't matter what your credit is to borrow from the lender. So in this particular deal, what it did was I would have needed to bring in, I'm trying to do the math off the original closing. I think I was going to have to bring in uh, like $40,000 down, and I ended up bringing in only like 10,900. And so it essentially tripled or quadrupled my cash on cash return. And I was paying the guy 4% interest for 5 years, but I ended up when I refinanced 18 months later, I took the money out of the refinance, paid him completely off, and didn't pay interest on the last half. So it really boiled down to I paid like 1% interest on the money I borrowed from him, and now I still have I don't know 35% equity in this property, and it was cash flowing the whole time. So, I mean, my tenants were paying back the seller financing and the mortgage. And then, like I said, 18 months later, out of equity, refinance, paid them all off, and I've got no cash in the deal.
Yeah, and that's just such a powerful financing technique. And again, that kind of goes into just how creative you can get in real estate. And that's why I love the assets so much is there's not just one, two, three, alleys in which you can kind of go down in real estate, right? It's, let's say 100 different alleys. And then from there, you're branching off from there and getting creative because the way that you underwrite a deal isn't going to be the same way I underwrite a deal, which is not going to be the same way the guy next door is going to underwrite that same exact deal. And that's truly what drove me into real estate is just being able to get so creative. And we're taking the tax benefits and everything else out of the equation, right? Just talking about how creative you can get on the terms of a deal.
Yeah.
And it's just unbelievable, what this asset class can truly do for your life and for the lives of your family members, friends, and people that you can pass this knowledge on down to. And that's kind of what I see you doing. And I think that's a real big reason why I wanted to have you on the show is just, we have a very similar mindset. And I think that we also are kind of moving in the same direction, right? Growing our real estate business and empire, but also, educating along the way and having people understand how important it is to learn these skills and techniques to better your life, better your situation, and you being in the military, right? And doing this while you're in the military so that you can have a better life when you get out is just putting you one step ahead of 90% of the guys that who are not doing this. So you want to dive a little bit deeper into how that is, right? Like how is that transition now going to be? I know that you're going to be you're looking to retire, right, or become a reserve at some point, right? How does that life look for you in the next 6, 12, 18 months, and how are you getting ready to kind of get out of the military life where your life is just so, I guess, structured, right? And you don't have to worry about structuring it yourself as an entrepreneur. And I know you've been working on that. What are some things that you're doing to work on that and get ready for when you're 100% self-employed?
Well, it's kind of, man, there's a lot there that I would like to tell you I have all the answers for, but I'm learning as I go. For one thing, the whole telework thing right now, where we're working like 1 week on, 1 week off, I've been trying to take that, to my advantage and go, okay, well, if I only have, if I've got this entire week off, I'm going to try to schedule my day and play with my structure as far as what I would be doing if I was actually self-employed. Now, granted, obviously, I can't go to lunches with people and I can't go look at properties and I can't meet sellers, but it's something of a similarity as far as the content production and stuff. So it allows me to be, to see if I would really be productive on my schedule as opposed to just saying I'd be really productive when I'd end up finding ways to waste time. And then I mean, there's that. There's getting finances in check, lowering expenses and stuff. I mean, I've been oogling this new video camera for like 2 months now, and it would be a business expense and it would help me and this, that, and the other. But trying to say like, okay, that's great, but I don't need it. The one I have still works, so I'm gonna keep that expense at bay for now, and I'm gonna just save that money to invest later. So stashing cash and trying to keep investing. So building both the platform online and the investment strategy. So the nice thing is that I plan on going back to a lower cost area to live, and my wife, has a job lined up. So when I get back there, I won't necessarily have to work right away, which allows me the opportunity to be free and try to make it work for sure. And, I will have a large financial runway and, as of right now, a fairly decent stream of passive income coming in. So the hope is that all of that will stay completely afloat and just continue to grow. So right now I'm probably at a point where if I was to walk, I'd be able to live without having to, go take a job. But I'm not yet at the point where I would be able to live and continue to build my portfolio because I'm like right at like the barely break even point for passive income and everything. So I'm trying to get to the point where, okay, I still will have $2,000 or $3,000 a month coming in that I can invest on top of my break even point so that I can keep growing. Because what a lot of people don't realize is if you get into real estate, it becomes the thrill of the hunt. Like it's a game, it's fun. And so even if I was at a point where I wanted to, be done, I don't know if I would because
Mhm.
it's enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think there's always another, you know, piece or um, another avenue to go down in real estate and to maybe, I don't know if chase is the right word, but to create for yourself, right? Because again, there's a million ways that you can make money in real estate, a million ways that you can help people in real estate. So even if it's not, you continuing to buy more property, maybe it's you educating more people, right? Um, so there's always, I don't think that our jobs will ever be done at some point, right? It's like you'll never retire from real estate
Yeah.
because I don't look at it, for me anyway, I don't look at it as a job, right? I look at it as a hobby in which I truly have a ton of passion for, but the hobby generates income and allows me to do other things alongside it, right? Because I'm able to go ahead and like right now I'm able to do this with you.
Yeah.
I'm able to have this podcast and I'm able to have an amazing conversation. You and I were having a conversation for 20 minutes prior to this and just talking shop, talking about, your life as a Marine, and just talking some real estate. And I truly, I'm just so grateful for that because not many people can do this, and that's truly why I, chose this path. Um, so just want to change gears for a minute and talk about some of your failures, right? Um, as a real estate investor, we all have failures. I mean, without a failure, you're never you'll never get to that next point because you have to trip over yourself in order to keep pushing forward. Um, One of your favorite failures, over the past 10 years, right? Or I guess you started real estate in 2013. Is that right?
15.
2015. Okay. So
Yeah.
over the past 5 years, what has been your favorite failure and why?
Mm. I mean, man, I've made a lot of them. Uh, you know,
As we all have. So,
my favorite is probably just realizing that I should have pulled the trigger faster because someone else got a deal that I knew was good and didn't pull the trigger fast enough. And I say my favorite because that didn't actually cost me anything to learn.
true.
Opportunity costs, but probably the hardest lesson to learn is that I need to understand that people, as wonderful as they are, and as much as I would like to think that if I pay them and they'll do what I paid them for, uh, everything needs to be contractually obligated and documented. So I had a contractor essentially rob me blind on a property, and I lost like $30,000 on the flip. That was probably that was my most recent failure. So we'll go with uh, favorite because 30,000, whatever. That sucks, but that's not the end of the world. And I learned some good lessons through that. But essentially, I just needed to do a better job with how I paid him, how I managed him, and how I verified everything he said because he I don't think he meant to do it, but he overextended his business and imploded while I was just like, oh yeah, la 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 la, everything's good. Contractor said we got stuff going on, and I gave him way too much trust way too early.
Yeah. And a $30,000, I guess, learning lesson is not a terrible, cost for tuition, right? Could have been much worse. And that's something that now you learn, and that'll never happen again, right? So what have you now put in place to avoid something like that? Is it more so a contract, right? Or is it something that you're implementing, you know, a specific piece of a contract in which you're implementing in order to avoid that in the future?
I mean, the contract, yeah, just I think more than just having everything contracted. I mean, we didn't have like an official binding contract. We had everything discussed via emails and very solidly documented via traffic. So, I mean, it's still basically the same thing because it's very I mean it's not a full contract, but it'll hold up in court because it's like here's a scope of work. What's this going to cost? This much. Okay, great, I can do that. Let's do it. Let's have it done by this date. It's all there. So it still holds up. I would definitely contract, like physically contract everything in the future, but more importantly than that, i would I would have my property manager go by every week to inspect what was done before handing him the payment, and I would hold more of the uh, labor costs back. So at the time, we were doing, a decent amount of um, renovation or whatever, but I was paying, the checks were coming in normal, but I was just having my wife drop them off, which is fine, but she's just not as savvy on the construction stuff, and I'm out of state. And so I would have my property manager go through and actually say, okay, well, this is what you were supposed to do on the scope of work. What did you do? All right, awesome, cool. And I would probably pay 25% of the labor costs up front, 25% of the labor costs halfway through, and I would hold the other 50% of labor costs until everything was done,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not my job to pay your employees. It's my job to ensure the job gets done. You should be able to employ. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to hold all the money back, but I mean, I essentially this guy paid all of his employees and not for materials. Apparently, I don't know. I mean, supposedly they got stolen, but there's no receipt. So I don't know. I don't know if he just gave them a check and said, "Here, go buy some materials with this," and then they just disappeared. Uh, it's just a big mess because I was, oh, okay, cool. He sent me some pictures. He said everything's good. I mean, my wife went by, but when I went by to look at the work, like, I mean, somebody who knew what they were looking at would have known that. I mean, they didn't put insulation behind drywall. Drywall wasn't up to code. The floor, they had redid some of the subfloor, and they put untreated wood on a rock foundation, which is just like a bunch of really stupid rookie mistakes that a normal person might not notice, but anyone who knows something about real estate would have noticed. And so I should have had somebody who knew about real estate inspecting that work.
Yeah. Yeah, and we all have those aha moments or moments of where you're like, damn,
Yeah.
you know, that'll never happen again. But it's a cost in doing business, especially when you're a newbie and you're not necessarily, you haven't been there before. It happens to you once, um, you better not let it happen to you again, type thing. Especially in this industry, because it's not, a couple of bucks here, a couple of bucks there. It could be a $30,000 swing, which can kill a deal, right?
Yeah.
Or it's just important to have all of your angles kind of covered, right? And yeah. So, what would be your advice to someone looking to get their first deal?
Learn everything you can, podcasts, books, whatever, about the specific. So first, figure out what niche you want to get into. Like, what's your goal, right? Are you trying to wholesale real estate? Or are you trying to find buy and hold properties? What depending on what your goal is for that. Once you figure out that niche, learn everything you can about that niche. Read some books, listen to podcasts, read blog posts, Google Monster, whatever,
Yeah.
and everything you can. And then just network with people who are already doing it in your area. Go to local meetups, or right now you can do that virtually. So if you're investing in the Midwest, you don't even have to be there to attend their meetups, and network with those people and talk to them and learn from what they're doing and see how you guys can help each other. And, if you can tag along on one of their deals, if it's someone who flips houses, maybe you find a deal that makes sense and you just hand it to them and say, here's a deal. Can I follow along and watch you through this process? Can I, I'm giving you a deal, like whatever. Um, and people think that's crazy because you're working for free. But I mean, go back 100 years. How did you learn a trade? You became an apprentice. All right. Well, there's something to that. So I think that there's value to that. So I would say network with somebody and see if you can tag along and learn what they're doing that works and doesn't. And then don't be afraid to take action, pull the trigger. I mean, if like, especially the house hack is such an easy justification to do because, you need a place to live anyway. Why not live in a place where you can learn how to landlord and have someone else pay part of your mortgage? But just make sure you're not afraid to pull the trigger, because if you never take action, that's when the real learning takes place. Like, it's great to learn, it's great to network, but man, the moment you start doing it yourself, you really have to learn a lot very fast, and it's very good for you.
Yeah, I love that. And I think taking action is definitely the number one thing that people are just scared of, right? And just putting yourself out there, making that mistake that's, potentially not even going to cost you anything, especially in the beginning. Just maybe it makes you feel uncomfortable or makes you look stupid, right? But, putting yourself out there, putting yourself in those uncomfortable positions, I think is everything in the beginning, because that's what's going to truly gear you up for those next, those bigger deals and those bigger situations in which are going to be a little more pressuresome. And um, a diamond's made under pressure, right?
Yep.
So it's important to take that action and put yourself in those positions. So going back to your resources and podcasts and things that you listen to and read in order to kind of get yourself um, in that mindset and create that knowledge platform for yourself. What would you say are your number one, one or two resources, whether it's a podcast or a book? I know you already mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad, but how about something a little more real estate driven and in the podcast world as well?
Are we still talking towards beginners?
Yeah, let's
All right.
let's talk beginners, and then let's talk about your favorite right now as well. Let's talk.
So beginner stuff, I think either the book on investing in rental properties or how to invest in real estate are probably both great spots to start. They're both Brandon Turner books. Probably the Bigger Pockets podcast. They actually have a rookie podcast out now that's got some good information too. They're just such a huge platform. You can go into those forums and you can find the answer to like every question you want, and they're not going to charge you for it. So it's pretty cool. I also really like the book 4 Hour Work Week as a beginner, which is just all about how to outsource tasks, how to be more efficient, and how to start thinking in terms of how do I get the most done in this short time period instead of the W-2 hourly job or salary job, which is how do I get to the end of this workday and maybe I try to do the least amount of work without getting fired.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love it.
As far as more advanced, like what I'm reading right now, as you go down this, you start to deviate from specific real estate books and get into all kinds of weird stuff. So currently, probably the most advanced book I'm reading right now is Big Debt Crisis by Ray Dalio, which is all about economic cycles and swings, which is a super dense read, but it's really good. And I should have read it a year ago. Um, I really like, if you've ever heard of the Incerto series, which is like 5 books from Nassim Taleb, which is all, I mean, it'll totally screw with how you think about anything risk mitigation. And it's awesome. I mean, it'll just change your perspective on a lot of things for the better. And my testament to that would be that the hedge fund or the fund that he manages or has a part in made a 3,600% return in March. So he knows a thing or two about how to bet against, the odds and whatever. So
Wow.
smart dude, very, very, very thinks against the grain of normal society. And I love it. And I also like nuanced books, like the 2 that I'm reading again right now for probably the 3rd time are The Like Switch, which is all about how to get people to like you through like nonverbal, just like body language things you can do with networking with people that makes you a little bit more familiar. And um, trying to think of pitch anything, which is
Okay. Oh,
I always forget the name of that book because I just call it frame control, but
okay.
which is all about how to control the frame of a conversation and kind of similar. So it's like how to make people like you, but at the same time how to make sure you're still the alpha in the conversation so that you come in from you have a better position for negotiations. And that, I mean, there's so many things I can talk through. You can go through so many rabbit holes, but those are some good ones right now that I'm reading.
Great. Yeah, I think that'll get somebody a good foundation, right?
Yeah.
Especially Rich Dad Poor Dad. Highly recommended. Whether you're looking to get started in real estate or just understand the power of passive income and the difference between that active and passive income. So I think that's also obviously one of those staples, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good one for sure.
Cool. And my final question for you, before I let you go and let you get back to your day, is if you had $100 today to spend on a resource, right, an educational resource, what would it be?
My real estate course. No, I'm just kidding. Um, that's a really good question. I like that.
Because you know what, I think a lot of people think that they have to have thousands and thousands of dollars to invest in education, but there's so much free content out there, and then there's some really, really, really good paid content that's not going to break the bank, and that's kind of what I want to get at here, and see what your favorites are.
So I would say, I mean, you're right, because I YouTube and Google for a very large majority of my learning. I'm very tempted to tell you the answer is, 5 or 6 really good books,
Mhm.
but I would say I would look around and see if there's a local real like a local real estate investor association. Like for example, the one that I'm a member of here, I think it was $80 for the year. And that's, 12 meetings with 80 to 100 people that know what they're doing. So that's a very valuable resource. Um, Alternatively, if you wanted to get really crazy, you might take that, split it into 3 different lunches and take somebody out to lunch that you want to learn from and just find a way to start building a relationship with them to get in with them. I would probably focus on something that's not necessarily tangible, but more relationship driven because relationships are the name of the game in this. Alternatively, probably books or Audible. I'm a huge Audible guy. And if neither of those and you're wanting a more specific resource, then I would probably say if you're actually trying to like get started, that $100 would go towards a list of names, postage, and envelopes that I could use to find homeowners that might be struggling and send out some letters.
Love
Uh,
that, man. I love
So
that you kind of broke that down into your, number one, relationships, because I believe that this business is relationship driven, and it's the people business that, above and beyond everything else. Um, and then obviously the books and podcasts are kind of intertwined right there, to build that knowledge base that you need. And yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head, man. So
that's
again, yeah, man,
thanks.
I truly, truly, really appreciate having you on the show. Appreciate all the knowledge and everything that you've already given to our audience and everyone listening. I think people who are looking to get started in real estate, this is a perfect time, right? Where people have a ton of more time on their hands than they maybe did, 2 months ago. There's so much content out there these days, whether it's free, paid, you name it. And I think a lot of the people who are probably less likely to have some time and to be able to give you a little bit of their time, maybe have a little more time now, right? Maybe people are, looking for someone like yourself, looking to get started, to shoot them an email or send them a DM or a private message. And you never know where that initial conversation could go with someone who's, could be your next mentor, right? And I think that everyone's got to start somewhere, and right now is the perfect time. I mean, tell me not.
Yeah, I think this is a great time because you've got all the time in the world to sit and learn, and you can virtually network with anybody without, the people that you probably wouldn't have been able to get a hold of because of how busy they are 2 weeks ago, might be able to get a hold of right now. They're probably sitting at home just like you.
Yeah, I love that. And again, man, thank you for everything, ladies and gentlemen. David Pere. Just again, thank you for your service. Thank you for being an influence, and just such an amazing uh, person for someone who is in the military, and just anyone looking to get into real estate and has a full-time job or anything of the sort. Such an amazing role model, and appreciate having you on. Grateful for you hopping on, and appreciate it, man. And I'm looking forward to seeing where your brand and your business goes over the next few years. Where can people find you on social media, and where can people find your real estate course, man?
Yeah. So at From Military to Millionaire, I'm on Instagram. That way, that's my biggest platform. Facebook, YouTube, whatever. You can find me at From Military to Millionaire, or just Military Millionaire, Military to Millionaire, any combination of that. I do have, I joked about it earlier, but I do have a real estate investor course that I think is actually, I've scoped out some of the people who have $400, $500, $600 courses. $900 seems to be and I have more modules and more content, like time wise. I haven't looked through their content, but I'm charging all of $97 because that's not how I make my money. I just know that if I don't charge money, nobody will ever finish the course. So it's super affordable, and it's just like a how to get from 0 to 1. I mean, that's literally the title, From 0 to 1 Real Estate Investing for Beginners. So it's just, I got not sick of, but I couldn't keep up with all the people asking me how to invest in real estate. So I was like, I just built this big course. Here you go.
Send them there now, right?
This will tell you everything you need to know. Because it does a way better job than I would ever be able to do in like 2 DMs on Instagram. So
Yeah,
then you can find that on my website, From Military to Millionaire. You can also find it through my Instagram, or if you just hit me up.
good stuff, man. Again, appreciate you coming on, and look forward to connecting with you again soon, man.
I
Appreciate
appreciate it,
it.
brother. This is fun.
Thanks a lot, man.